all ages. We are live on another Thursday, another episode of the Mattriarchy. I am here today with our special guest, David. No, that's this way. That's the one. David Doob, who is going to be here to talk about his comic. And I've got my good friend, The Metal. I'm not sure how good of friends we are. We're good internet friends. You know how.
Yeah, it's hard to say you're a good friend with somebody if you've never met them in person.
He seems to be a good guy. He does what he says, and I like his comic, The Metal. So, The Metal is knowledgeable about all kinds of things. So when I read this preview comic that you sent over, David, I said, who would be interested in this? I think would be The Metal, because he knows all sorts of obscure stuff. So tell us, because The Metal doesn't know anything about this. He just got roped in.
Okay, that's a great way. That's the best way to get into these things, isn't it? I actually found out about this. Little Deaths is based upon a young lady called. My French is terrible, which is funny because I write a French comic now. Julie de Abadini, and I actually learned she's a actual person back from 16th century France, and I learned about her through memes. The meme I first saw was one, and I verified this is a true story, where as true as you can get back then, where apparently she was seeing this young lady, and her parents found out, and she's all like, well, that's wrong. So they sent the young girl to a nunnery. And so Julie was all like, well, no, you can't do that. I want her back. So she sneaks into the nunnery, digs up a dead nun, because, she's not going to kill anyone, but, digging up corpses, that's cool. They're already dead, serve multiple purposes. Puts the corpse in her girlfriend's bed to fake her death, and then to, make sure it's all sealed, burns the place down. And then they break up. They break up a couple of months later because it wasn't that serious.
Apparently not.
Well, that's how things go in the high life.
Yeah.
That's it's crazy. So this Julie de I can't pronounce a lot of things either.
Yeah. But yeah.
But it's also was reading on the Kickstarter that it has. She was also known as Mademoiselle Maupin or La Maupin.
Yeah,
which I think I'm saying that part right.
Yes. Mademoiselle Maupin or La Maupin, or however, because she was actually married through a lot of that time. Her father was a I forget the full title, but basically he trained all the pages for the Sun King, Louis the 14th, 15th. I get those confused. She was raised as a page, so she knew how to read, write, sword fight, but also her father would take her out on benders, so she knew how to drink and gamble. But then she got married off to the Maupin, but then she ran off with this sword teacher who killed a man in a illegal duel. So they were doing all this. They fled to south of France, but to make their way, they had to, do sword performances and song and dance to make money. And she knew opera, she knew sword fighting, and she did this until like 34, and she burned fiercely. So by 34, consumption and all the others, she just burned out pretty quick. But she lived her life to the fullest. So we thought that was So we thought that'd be an awesome character to play with, and we threw some supernatural stuff because I think that that would have fit her just right, and we just had a lot of fun with it.
Well, and I like I said, I read the preview comic. It sure is something. Who is your artist?
That is Andrew Herman. He's done some work for Action Lab. He did a book called Zoe Dare. He does some cover work. He does a lot of cool stuff. I like his style. When I came up with this idea, I knew his style would be really great for this.
Yeah, and it does. It gives it gives it a very like classic kind of a Classics Illustrated, a kind of a European feel to it, which of course
very almost gives me like a Solomon Kane feel just looking at it.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that.
That's awesome because that was one of the inspirations I was going for. Particularly, Robert Howard had a character called Agnes. I can't remember.
Oh, I see. Scrolling down, you've got a picture of the cover for Sword Woman.
Yeah. And even she was a lot more fierce and angry, to where Julie was more chill and romantic, where Agnes was like, "I'm gonna cut you." So, but still that sort of fantasy, high adventure sort of thing. And some of the stories were inspired by Solomon Kane as well, because like the first story actually was inspired by that story of his where he just goes up and there's like, oh, there's a devil worshiper in that castle, and he's all like, well, I gotta kill him, and you're like, yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and and the thing too is there's a so how long have you been working on this project? Let's go with that one here.
We started this before the pandemic. I talked to Andrew about it before beginning of 2020. And we're like, yeah, something to do and all of that. And then the world came apart and he goes, I have a lot more free time to work on this. So so we was like, okay, cool. And we can, see he wasn't making a lot of money at shows and such because there were no shows. And we're like, okay, we can develop it and see how it goes and see if this is a different way for revenue stream for him. Because being a writer, I have to have a day job to keep food on the table and all that. So we've developed, and also he wanted it finished before we put it out. So It wasn't like, oh, here's 5 pages, let's go. It's like, nope, he did it all, and you can see with his style, it's more detailed and classic. So it takes a little bit longer than some, other penciling styles and all that.
And so, did he do like all of the work, the colors and everything?
He did everything but the lettering.
Okay.
Now, saying that, there is we got a friend of his to do a backup story, but he did all the pencils and colors on that preview issue you saw.
Which, let's go ahead and share that so that the
Sure.
folks at home can take a look at it. I just got to get into the right tab so I can do that. Hang on a second. Okay. Here is my screen share button, because I'm the most professional show on the internet. That's not true. And so there's some of the art, and there is the whole thing. Oh, it's not sharing. Oh my goodness, I forgot to click the button over here.
Okay, yeah, I was all like, I see me, I'm pretty, but
yeah, that's
super professional.
See, I tell you. Curses. So, because in order to manipulate the screen, I had to go over to that one to tab over, you see.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I couldn't tell that it wasn't on. What? Okay, hang on. It's giving me fits, man. Fits. Okay, there we are. See? Now I can scroll through it. Now, the first thing I noticed is how much like French the text is, right? There's like tons of French on here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a passing knowledge of French. What was your decision process of putting so many phrases in there? Because there's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like Andrew was like, I need translation, so I had to translate it for him and all that. And I was just growing up with heavy metal and all those European comics and stuff. I wanted to have fun with it, and anything that wasn't plot critical, I put in there. And I kind of did that for fun, for people who knew, people who want to look it up, because some of it is, just simple like banter back and forth or drinking songs. some things people can figure out pretty easy, like Menage a Trois, or Little Deaths is actually a play on a French term, La Petite Mort, which Andrew said, no, we can't put La Petite Mort on the cover. It's like, why not? It's like, no one's going to get it. It's like, we'll be big in France. Like,
oh, that's a good name too.
Yeah, I have to be completely honest with you. Like, I picked up on that immediately, and I was like, is that what they're doing with it? And then I read the comic, and of course that's what they're doing with it.
Maybe.
Yeah, I do the same thing. As I don't know how caught up Reese is, but I just have like people from other places talking in their native tongue, as long as it's not important to the story. It's like, whatever, you can look it up. Even all my aliens, they speak in Mandarin because it refers to itself as the common tongue. So I figure like that should just be the common tongue in the universe.
Yeah. I do a lot of that in my same comics too. And you can also say things you wouldn't normally be able to say in English that you'd say in other things that you're all like, what?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things too is I've got next week I have Doug Ernst coming on to talk about his second Soul Finder book. Cool. And he uses it's about if you're not familiar, David, it's about an order of exorcists. And so he uses Greek and Latin exorcism rites in the book. So they actually they're he goes out of his way to keep it as authentic as possible, still being in like a modern fantasy setting. So
I do some other horror books, and I always try to put some old Latin prayers and such in there, really old. And I've been having fun lately to where I would, for some demonic stuff, I'll just take some old Norwegian death metal lyrics and just put them in there. And if you translate them in English, it's all like, I will rip off your neck, crap down your neck hole. I was like, okay, let's put it back in Norwegian.
Yeah, that's pretty hilarious. So I think I already asked this, but I forgot the answer. This is embarrassing. Andrew did the colors as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, you did ask that if he did all of it. He did everything but the letters. Yeah,
something happened and I got distracted myself and I didn't retain the story on there. So that was that whole thing. So now this preview, is this 21-page preview in the book itself?
Yes.
Okay. So and the book is 30 pages altogether?
Yes. There's you have the meat of the story.
The meat of the story.
And then we have each book, what we're looking at is their little one shots and whatnot. Each story is little, vignettes. There's no broader continuity, if you will.
Okay.
I mean, there is. It's all set around the period where they fled Paris to the south of France. And this is just all the adventures they did. So the next one is, if I have the image, I can share my screen and show it. May take me a second. I'm so technological too.
Well, I think one of the things that's fun about that is it feels, I mean, like you were talking about Howard being a big inspiration, and like his stories, they all form part of a canon for his different characters, but none of them are in order.
Yeah. You kind of have to piece together the Hyborian age.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same with like, one of the things I got looking at it too is like the old Zorro comics that went along with the TV series. And there was no order to those either, but you piece them together, they all have this continuity that's part of them, but it's not like you were reading Batman every month where it's all sequential. And so I think that's kind of a fun little take on it.
Yeah, and we did that for multiple ways. One, we can change styles and all of that, and we don't have to be all like, okay, well, we were doing a sexy comedy romp, and now we're doing a horror story. How do we change those gears really quick? Like, well, you don't. So we're all like, let's do them just quick little shorts and all that. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, I can. Oh, yeah, cool. Let me.
You should be able to.
Yeah, let me jump here. If you can see that. I don't know how big it is. Oh, no. Let's see if I can zoom in on it. This is the one. Oh shoot!
Wrong way.
Wrong way. But yeah, you can get a hint of it there. That is the second story.
Let me see if I could change the layout, if that'll make the thing any bigger. Well, that didn't help.
Slightly.
That helped a little.
I mean, it probably looks fine to anybody looking at this at full screen and not boxed in like we are in the studio.
That's true.
But then they don't have the chat.
Ooh.
But yeah, so that was a little bit of a hint of the second one. And that's one of the big stretch goals is we have one penciled out, and Andrew will complete up, and we'll add a whole new 12-page story, and that's our more dark story.
Cool.
And more horror, if you will. And again, I used a good I stole some legend in that because French legends and all that, because Andrew wanted a good ghost story, and I was like, okay, let's go find a good French ghost story. And there's this one where there's this man who wanders the battlefield after he was killed in the grand battle for his love and all that, but he's looking for the horse. He's wandering the battlefield, apparently to this day, looking for his lost horse. So it's all like, we got to do that one. And it gets darker from there. Like, what? But
I'm terrified to ask for details, but that's
Hey, I don't know. Your horse was a very important thing to you back in the day. It's something. I mean, if you had like your first car and you were looking for it, I think people could relate to it a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, your horse was like part of you almost.
Yeah, almost like your first house, because it's that big of an investment, you know.
Well, and when also there's that old poem, all for the want of a horseshoe nail, right? Which plays into the importance of mounted cavalry. So
yeah,
that's a factor with that. So, but yeah. So I mean, so this is, like I said, you've got two stories in the book as it is, and it might bump up to 3.
If we make the big stretch goal.
Which is how much? What are you looking at for that one? Let's actually click over to the page. Let me do the share on that one here.
Yeah, I gotta look at it too, because oh yes, that's if we hit 7,000.
7,000, and you are at. Let's look here.
I think we're almost to. Oh, we're at 55.
Yeah, 56. So I have.
Oh yeah, 56. Sorry, I was going by the next stretch goal, which was
here it is right there.
Yeah, because we've hit 2 stretch goals where we added 2 content now, to where we added the RPG character sheet of Julie, and we have a module set in the Little Death's universe. So it's kind of like it's sort of the Phantom of the Opera, and Julie's in it.
Oh, that's fun.
So we already had that release as PDFs, but now we're adding that into the book.
Oh, cool.
And so the next one is, as Andrew called it, the boobies cover.
Was that? I think I saw that one up there.
Yeah, I can share it if you want me to, or if you got it there.
If you'd like, that's fine.
Because I also wanted to cheat and show what the next chapter may look like. Let me do the share screen. Gotta open the picture. Fine, I'll be that way. And also, Andrew wanted a very classic, wanted title cards, like in classic movies with James Bond and all that. Mm-hmm. So each of the, if you see the photo now or not, that is the.
Here we go.
I can't show the boobs one. What? Oops! I make it go away. There. Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's just the risque cover. I can't actually show you what we have planned for the other one yet because it's not finished. Let me show you what the other chapter, some of that art looks like. Andrew's going to get annoyed because he's a perfectionist, but
Wow.
mm-hmm.
And that's some craftsmanship right there, man.
Let me see if I have any other. Yeah, there's some more. Oops, and I ran out. Don't want to show too much, anyways. Show a little bit more.
Okay.
And this is all rough, so it's not completed or anything. So it's a sneak preview.
Very, very cool. Well, that's what I like about my show. It's so little watched that I get all kinds of exclusives. So, but yeah, I think that's a cool deal, man. And so, like I said, you ran into La Maupin on a meme.
Yes, a meme.
Right. Tell us the story about that? I am fascinated about exactly what kind of a meme this was. In fact, if you have it to share, that would be awesome.
Yes, I actually have one of them, and we actually took some and made we made copies of our own as well.
Which is cool. I think that there's a power to meme marketing that I wish I could figure out.
Yeah. Well, luckily she already was built in, so we're all like, just do what everyone else has done. But let me show you the one of the original ones that I saw. And this is one of the first ones I saw.
Okay, here we go. Let's load that up there. Killed 10 men.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so, of course, being the internet, I was like, is this real? Or is this someone, is this marketing or just, someone's OC or something? But I looked it up.
Right.
And no, she's real. Very real.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So now, you have mentioned on your page there that one of your big inspirations came from like the heavy metal magazine, and you talked earlier about being into European comics. What is your comic adventure? Journey. How did you get into comics? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Shows my owl is that for me, it was the spinner rack at 7-Eleven. And I got into it from then, and picked up some books here and there. And then I was collecting, it was the Acts of Vengeance crossovers with the Avengers and the Avengers West Coast. And I missed an issue. I was like, what do I do? How do you get the issue? And my dad goes, well, there's this place called a comic book store, and they have older issues. And I was like, what? And he took me to this place, and this was the worst introduction to a comic store possible. It was a strip mall that was empty. It was only the comic book store hidden in an alcove and an old Showbiz Pizza. So yeah, super creepy. But so there's nothing in there. The plants are all dead in the shrub, in the landscaping of the place. And we're going down back in this way and go to the comic store, and they had the issues I missed and the issues before I started. And I'm like, and I just, it just started from there. But then I was, this was before comic delineations, before, we had, the difference between manga and all of that. And I was reading comics from Viz, who, brought in Silent Mobius and Rama One Half. And then I read the heavy magazines and Moby and all of that. So I was just like, the world is full of comics. And I absorbed it all. And to me, it was all just comics. And then, of course, later, everyone had their camps and all. I was like, but manga,
it is
comics
all just
in
comics.
Japanese. Yeah, it is. It's all sequential storytelling. And then, of course, you get the guys who go, well, cave drawings are sequential. You're confusing the issue.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm not saying cave drawings weren't comics.
Yeah, it's just let's not get into the.
Here's the bottom line. You're not going to take anything off a Babylonian wall and roll it up, stick in your back pocket, and drive to the 7-Eleven to get soda pops. So that's not what we're talking about.
Well, I mean, if we got paper and we actually made etchings of them, because a lot of the Babylonian stuff were carvings, we actually could probably make comics out of that.
You're not wrong, but that's also like at that point you might as well just saddle stitch it and sell it to 7-Eleven, right? We're back to that again.
See, it's a slippery slope. Down the spiral we go.
Although metal, now I have the urge to like find some prints of old Babylonian etchings and make a comic out of it. Just rearrange them.
It'd be pretty easy.
I know, right?
Except the etching part, I'm sure you'll be breaking laws, maybe national laws, making the etchings.
Well, the thing is a bunch of that's already been done, so it's just a matter of getting it. And then doing like the old webcomic thing and copy and pasting them from the old etchings.
like that one, and then you put in your own dialogue with that one guy who took old public domain romance comics and put in his own dialogue. See, you're just going further back. I have some plans on that.
It's transformative.
Absolutely, it's transformative. But no, I think well, back to the thing. Yeah, I started comics a lot the same way. I found them at the grocery store, found them at the gas station when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And first time I went to a comic book shop was down in Denver, Colorado, one of the Mile High Comic satellite stores when they still had those.
That's not fair. Where I lived, we had nothing like a Mile High.
No, see, I didn't live in Denver. I lived in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, right? So I'm about 4 hours from there. It was a big deal for me.
Oh, okay.
And the one I went to was not the main superstore. It was one of because they had at one point 7 satellite stores across Denver. And so I went to one of the grotty little satellite stores. And it was so it was almost that experience, but it wasn't quite so scary. But I'm in there then there's, of course, they've got the kid friendly stuff right next to the not so kid friendly stuff. So my eyes are like this, looking at all the Batman and everything, and my parents' eyes are this, looking at all the cleavage.
Yeah,
is my kid seeing what we're seeing? And I wasn't. I wasn't quite there yet. So yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about. There was one of my favorite shops for many, many years was always a little unnerving because it always smelled a little bit too much like the litter box. They had the store cat, and they were
nice.
Oh yeah, they're the greatest people. I'll tell you, just the nicest folks, and the comics are in really good shape. But when you've got an old cat, everybody knows you've got an old cat.
It's part of the charm.
My scariest experience in a comic shop, and this was in Louisville, Texas. It's not there anymore. And it was cranky old man, you read it, you buy it sort of thing. It's like, why are you in this business? This is not, or maybe you've been in it too long. And it was during the LA riot. So I was barely a teenager, and he was watching that on the show, and he was watching the Asian shopkeepers up on their tops of their shops, Well, I'm trying to be sensitive because that guy was not. He was like, "Woo, I don't believe much in those guys, but I believe in what they're doing." And he pulls out a 38 and puts it on top of the counter. And I'm like, I would do the same thing. And I'm like 16. I'm like, I just want my comics. Don't shoot me. Batman is not worth dying for. What is wrong with you, old man?
As long as you're not going to walk off with his comics, he's probably not going to shoot you.
Yes.
If you're going to make a parallel,
I know some people.
Yeah,
and they embrace the roof Korean meme.
Well, I gotta say,
I've been to a lot of weird shops, but he was the weirdest. I've never been drawn on. I guess I should have expected that in Texas.
I've never been drawn on at a comic shop, but we have a collective of guys in my town that through the years have gotten together to work on comic projects and this and that. And I did have a guy walk into my kitchen once during one of these meetings and set down I think it was a 45 on the table. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm looking for something to draw. It's a still life." I said, "It's a gun. Tell me it's not loaded."
Yeah.
So that was my thing on it. Anyway,
I don't think I've ever been drawn on in a comic book store either. And I live in Texas. Like all my comic experiences have been in Texas. Like, man, I mean that doesn't shock me, especially up in Louisville, because I'm in the county. I'm in Dallas.
Okay. So you know,
I've never had that experience.
I think older, I would be able to deal with it better. I probably would have left faster because my 16-year-old brain was still like, I need to check out still. My 43-year-old brain, like, I'm out. Don't need the comic. I'll go download it.
There's another shop 6 blocks over. Please don't kill me.
Oh, especially DFW is a great area for comics. There's shops everywhere.
Oh, yeah. And so many different types too, because some of them blend over with the gaming, with the comics, with the other nerd stuff. And like, I have a friend up in Denton, and he only does back issues and supplemental stuff. He didn't want to fight with other, because Denton is full of shops. And he's like, I don't want to get into the back, the new stuff and all that. But I'm going to carry old issues and all this other stuff. And so, yeah, it's amazing. I think we're spoiled in the DFW compared to some other cities.
For sure. Especially like Arlington's also another area that's just like loaded with comic shops and stuff too, and it's just like everywhere.
The only trick is they keep changing names and owners and stuff. Like Lone Star
is now Wild West.
Yeah, well then Collected bought some of the others too, and then there's so many. So obviously we can talk comic shops all day.
Oh yeah.
So I'm looking at some of the rewards you have here, and you have a $2 indie comic pack. Does that include your book, or is that just other folks' books?
That is actually just other folks' books. I picked some other fantasy books, and that is not only to just support us in a little bit, but it's also to try other stuff. So it's a sampler package, and I even think we got a fantasy novel in there and some stuff. I've been working with. I forget how to say Russell's last name. Russell, sorry, I'm on Facebook so I can look it up. Russell Notley.
Okay.
And I worked with him, and we got a big Kickstarter pool. And you have to put books into it, and then you can draw from it either for tiers or for rewards, for like perks. So and for that, for every week, we're giving out a different comic for people who pledge that week.
Okay.
And again, it's just a great way to share other people's stuff.
Okay, that sounds fun. And you can get that just as by itself, or just as an add. Okay,
it's you can do it as a $2 tier, or it's an add-on. Every tier is an add-on. So sometimes I'm like, why is there $7? I'm like, oh, because they got our PDF and they got the $2 digital pack of other comics.
Okay. And so for a signed book, it's $15.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's shipping's included and everything.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. So.
And we put your name on the thank you page.
I always it's always weird when somebody's. I mean, I really appreciate it. I should say when the shipping is included, so you know exactly what you're getting up front.
Yeah.
It's
obviously
so much easier to shop that way.
Yeah, and that's why we thought we'll just figure it out. Obviously, some like Canada and Europe, we had to be like, we can't do that. But but the better packages actually is we have the combo packs where you can get both covers for for 30, and then because the other cover is 20, the risque cover. And then if you want all,
right.
And we made the title pages. We made them prints, and one of them is by Thomas Tinney, who did Force Works, which is funny. I was doing an interview with someone else. It's like, I know him from ACDC. I'm like, I know him from doing the U.S. agent in Force Works and all that. It's like, well, each their own.
Yeah, that was the Force Works. Now I'm trying to remember here. That was the relaunch of West Coast Avengers, right?
Yes.
Like, okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
that was, and it was an interesting one because I forgot the concept too, where they were preventive to where they was it Iron Man hooked up to Wanda's hex power and used it as a chaos prediction machine, using chaos logic to predict where bad stuff was going to happen.
So they show up, and then a monster happens to erupt out of the ground, and it's like, haha, back you go, smack, smack. Mm-hmm. we thought there'd be a monster here.
Which is funny because years later, when they had that whole issue with that Inhuman who could foresee trouble, and like Captain Marvel and all of them were all like, we're going to stop you because you're going to do something bad. And they literally have dialogue where Iron Man goes, no, you have to give him a chance to do something wrong. It's like, that's not what you said. It was, 30 years ago, but that's not what you said.
Well, yeah, Iron Man, man, this is off topic, mind you. And I feel this is a frustration. I don't think there's anybody, and maybe I'm wrong on here, but it seems like maybe there is not a character, like a big character in the big two that's been so like inconsistently written in the last 30 years as Iron Man. It's like sometimes he's all about private ownership and personal responsibility, and sometimes he's going to take and tell you what's good for you, and sometimes I mean, my goodness sakes, just pick a characterization and stick with it,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He has, I mean, he's had good runs, but they're lightning in a bottle. It's like those are isolated incidents where if you look at his arc, you're all like, I couldn't tell you. I mean, it's like, what? He's an alcoholic? That's a horrible characterization.
Yeah. I mean, and like that's part of the history, and so I think there's a place for that. But my goodness, so anyway, you're selling a page of the book, 100. You can get
to be have a page of the book, not trying to clarify that, not where we give you like comic art, but you can have a page in the book for like an ad or something like that.
Okay. But
obviously, it's got to be all like within. We got to approve it first. If it's just you going, you suck, and like,
Well, I would hope there's a little bit of creative control there. Well, and I wasn't sure if you had because that was one of my questions. Is I don't know if your artist does like digital or
he's digital.
He does full digital.
He's digital, but that's we do have he'll do sketches for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the top tier to where he'll do some sketches for you and send them out.
Okay.
He can do pencil and all that, but he likes the digital.
Well, a lot of people have moved that direction on it, and it's been a really I mean, for some people, the initial investment of the technology to do that is a real money saver when you consider how much paper can cost and shipping and everything for just to make a project happen.
Yeah,
I know. Like when I first started, when we first started trying to put stuff together in 2006, like that wasn't even an option,
Oh yeah.
And then we had I remember so you have all this big paper that you get sent in from artists wherever you're doing it, and then the question is how do you get that on your computer? Because we didn't have access to like a large bed scanner.
Oh yeah, and those are expensive back in the day.
It was cost prohibitive even to go through and try to like take them to the like newspaper and have them do the photo reproduction process. And it was just like, man, well, what are we gonna do? And so we just took everything to the Staples, took them on. It wasn't a scanner, it was just a photocopier reducing. So we had it reduced on photocopier to the size where our scanners could do it. We had to put it in that way, and then reduced it there into the comic size, and all digitally. And it was we had several of our first book, and I have a copy of it somewhere where the art just didn't look good after those kind of reductions, and it was passable, but it wasn't great. So
I just scan the corners and then in Photoshop clip them together properly.
Well, the problem was with doing something like that at that point was lining them all up, and
Not an
so
issue.
that was the biggest thing. And then so anyway, we did what we did with it, but we went through years later and rescanned in those stories that had lost so much of the detail, and they it's looked so much better with subsequent printings. But our first printing of our anthology had some real rough spots. So, well, okay. From Pops Van Zant is in the chat. He was suggesting Thor may have been written less consistently than Iron Man. Yeah, you might
Very
be right.
good possibility, yeah.
Very good possibility.
I don't know. He had a long. If you look at his old stuff, like when you had Basuma, yeah, or how you pronounce him, drawing him and all that. He had a very consistent, his very much, his warrior, like by the Thor of Hammer, ye gods, I shall strike thee down, varlet, and such. That was fairly consistent for a while. I would say in modern era, he's definitely like people are trying to put an interesting spin on him, which I know it's tricky, to say the least.
Yeah, I think one of the things too is like, and I have a hard time looking at it that way because like I hadn't really read Thor consistently super recently. And like, in the 90s, you had like, Walt Louis Simonson had years on Thor.
I love his omnibus. That is such a great run.
So whenever I picked it up, it felt consistent because it was the same couple writing it,
Yeah.
So it was just like, and it just had their flavor and flair to it. So and there have been a lot of Thors. That's true.
And that may be just a more modern problem in general, to where you don't have people doing the runs like they used to. And I think that partly is because, the different methodology of how they goose their sales numbers is all like new team, new launch, new spin, new vision.
What's a run? You mean a mini series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then you also have I think a factor in all of that too is the editorial control, right? You look at like, my bread and butter growing up, the House of Bat, right, under Denny O'Neil. I didn't care. It doesn't almost matter who was doing the writing. Like Batman's character and attitudes were pretty consistent across the board. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that who Denny put on that book, he has to understand that. So, and I think that's an issue with all of that too, is editorial control can play a huge factor in some of that stuff. This is a good point on Thor 2, is that it wasn't always even the same guy. And it's actually different, canonically different characters.
Well, no, it was the same characters. Just I know the frog one was a weird little play, and I thought that was just him doing humor. And I remember he did the armor because that was meant to be to show how badly wounded he was, and so he needed the armor. And such. I don't remember the red beard as much. I remember him having a blonde beard, and that was again because he was all scarred and hiding that.
Yeah.
Oh, mythological Thor is supposed to be a redhead.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting. So you have but back to Little Deaths. You have, because I know you said you had an hour, and we're getting close. So I want to make sure we hit all the high points on that.
Sure.
You have 18 more days. Am I remembering that right?
That is correct.
So, and you are already funded, which is awesome.
Yep.
And you are well on your way to that extra story goal.
Yes, that's what we're hoping for. I mean, as a writer and content in general, I just really want to get it out there. If not, we'll get it in issue 2, what have you, because I think me and Andrew have been very happy with the way it's gone and everything. But we can get out now. That's great. Everyone wait until issue 2. That's fine too.
So, how many issues? I mean, do you have it planned out? How many issues you'd like to tell, or how many stories you've got going on with that, or are you just riding the train till you're done?
No, we only have so many shorts at this point, so we haven't. Like I said, I haven't gotten them out. This is just one. Like I said, we've only done one time frame in her life. I think I only wrote one story back when she was in Paris, and then there's stuff later in her life too. So there's still a lot of stuff we can plumb. Right now, we're just focusing on her traveling through. Traveling from Paris to the south of France. So that alone has given us a lot of room. But later down, I'm trying to keep close to his life as possible as a framework. Obviously, we're not using all of her. We're not historians or anything. We're having fun, but I'm using her life as a framework. So we still have a lot of room for that.
So cool. I was like, one of the things I was really interested, I guess you say. It was curious. There was a lot of overt sensuality in the preview, right? And it was really, when we started talking about it, it was really interesting to find out that like that specifically is rooted in firm history.
No, this was not like, and that's why I liked it the most. It's about her, and she owned her sexuality, and it's interesting because she has very modern takes on her on herself, as far as I interpret it. She was very, you could say, gender fluid and fluid in her sexuality. No pun intended there. But and so I thought, she had a lot of ideas and concepts that we have now, but that was eons ago, when you burn witches at the stake for just having red hair and all this other crazy warts and stuff. So it was very interesting. So it wasn't like, oh, let's sex it up. It's like, no, let's present her front stage. She already did all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing too, is like it's pretty trendy to just sex things up.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say good or bad on it. It's just one of those things that it's intriguing to find a story that is frank with its sexuality, that is so not just as spice, but because that's an intrinsic part of a history of a real person.
Yes, and it spoke to me on that it was authenticity to it and all. It wasn't just. And it's funny though, the only caveats we do is put more supernatural in it. Like when I told Andrew about the nun stories, like, can they be vampires? I'm like, I guess they can be vampires. Isn't that a wild enough story as it is?
How would you say no to?
Yeah, I was like, that just sounds great. Let's go.
It's such a wild story in the first place. So I'm like, no, you can spice it up. But I'm like, it's insane in the first place. I mean, who back then would be all like, we're going to fake your death so we can go out? Like, what?
That's not as uncommon as you think, though.
Well, that's true. Like a lot of people were found ways of, my daughter was kidnapped by bandits. No, she just ran off with a farm kid to go mine.
Especially before forensics was a thing, so it's like, it doesn't matter. They see a dead body, it's charred. We can't tell. We can't take the DNA to find out if it's the right person or not.
I like she took that extra step. So like that one's been dead for a while. Why? It's like, well, she's moldy and starting to stink. Like, okay.
That's bizarre. So yeah. But anyway, that's a crazy thing. But yeah, I think that was one of the things I found was really interesting. The whole deal. I don't know if you're familiar with Preston Poulter's. He's another comic writer. He did a story about the called White.
He's a
Lily.
weird guy. I will say that, because he gets into some politics stuff. That was all like, I'm going to buy this name. I'm like, why do you want that fight? But that's just my 2 cents on that.
But, all of that is a side of what I was going to talk about, because
sorry.
No, it's fine.
You're talking about his White Lilies.
It's another historical fiction set World War II about the female fighter pilots. Yeah,
because I talked to him about it, and I was all like, the Night Witches? Like, no, those are the bombers. These are the fighter pilots. I'm like, never heard of that, so that was interesting.
Well, because like they all died. That was part of it. Is like the female bombers, like several of them lived after the war and everything. But
yeah.
So I think only one of the fighter pilot crew like didn't die in battle, and I think even she died in the years just after I might be wrong about that, but
Okay.
I seem to remember that. And so it's one of the things where like their story didn't really get told because everyone died.
No
And that
one
was
left to
one of
tell
the-
it.
That was one
Yeah.
of exactly. That was one of Preston's really interesting things was like there's a lot of stuff to talk about when everyone dies. Let's dig into this and let's imagine this kind of thing. And so it was pretty fun. And so like, you know, I like that history. I like alternate history is a big fan thing for me, but I also love, you know, being able to tie that into real history too.
Yeah,
And
same here. Same here. I always try to tie stuff into it, even if it's a little bit. I always love to put little bits of it to kind of almost as like a magic ritual where you kind of tie in to the real world, so it makes your story a little bit more alive, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And being able to like pull in just like those little tidbits of I don't know, like one of my favorite in back to mainstream comics, one of my favorite titles was Young All Stars, that Roy Thomas, and he went through and pulled in little bits of real history, little bits of DC continuity, little bits of fiction and the whole thing, and I thought it was a great package altogether. And so yeah, it was a really cool that you approached me with this book. It was fun to check out and interesting to learn some new stuff. So thanks for coming on. And
thank you for having me.
Well, of course,
Looks
man.
like Pops is trying to recruit you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll reach out to him.
Yeah.
If that's okay, because you know you guys get.
He'd love to feature on the April 5th. Hey, there you go. That's a Monday. Or not Monday.
Yeah. Oh, and you should have gotten more. At least $7 more.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Yeah, you pretty much sold me when you brought up Agnes de Castillon. And like, oh, it's that kind of story. I love Agnes. Okay, let's go.
Well, oh, darn it, that's the wrong link. I about shared the link to this show in the chat. So for anybody who's watching the show who doesn't know where to find it, we're right here on YouTube. Jeepers. Okay, hang on. Oh, it's being stupid. Okay. Oh, come on. Hey, we see this. Well, let me do this. No, it's not backspacing. I don't know.
My God, why? If you try turning it off and on again.
Well, I don't. If I do that, I'll lose the whole stream.
I was trying to do an IT crowds joke.
Yeah, I know. But
okay, sorry.
I'm also irritated. That's the other. I'm just annoyed right now.
Not funny. Not funny.
Oh my goodness sakes! Copy. Let's try it this way, and just hit paste and see if it. Nope, that didn't do it either. Well, this is the worst end of an interview I've ever had, and it's entirely my fault.
Awkward.
Yeah, right? There we go. Finally. There you go, chat. Check out David's book.
Do it.
There's a lot of French language and quite a bit of history. And all the curves you can shake a stick at. So there you have it.
My kingdom for a stick, or is it a horse? My kingdom for a horse.
For a horse. Oh, he is on. Pops is asking to ask you. He's on Facebook.
Yes, you can find me at David Daub or at Shownuff Studios.
And I think Pops, you and I are Facebook friends, and the link on there is actually I hot linked his account on the announcement for the show. So that's another way to find him. So or yeah, that's
I would chat, but I can't do it. It won't let me.
Yeah, you can't from here. You'd have to go to YouTube to do it. Only I can because it's my show. That's how it's set up. I don't necessarily like it that way. But hey, That's what you get when you get the free program.
Yeah. And see, like I'm logged in to restream myself. If I'm logged in, they should have links to my YouTube. They should just let me engage in the chat from right there.
That would make sense. That would make sense. So, Pop says thank you. Thank you very much, Pops.
Mm-hmm.
So,
cool.
Well,
thank
while
you.
we were talking, Twitless joined us.
Oh,
Twitless.
yes, I saw that T. I was like, today's episode is brought to us by the letter T.
Twitless is always brought to us by the letter T.
Yes, for testosterone.
Yes, the big T.
That was the most amazing, like, way you could have possibly said that. That was awesome.
Thanks.
So, yeah, we're gonna have our second half of the show. Matt Kratz and I were arguing today about what indie meant, or maybe it was yesterday, I think. And so I said, dude, Twitless and I were going to talk about our favorite Superman story, but screw that. Your topic is way easier. Well, about 2.5 hours ago, Matt's like, so emergencies are happening in my house and I can't make the show. So I don't really have a second half of the show planned. And David,
I thought we were finally going to argue about Kingdom Come.
Well, didn't we do that once already? I haven't reread it.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to bail out, guys. I'm about to turn into a frog.
That's fine. That's fine, man.
Frog, but still, yes.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. And,
thank you.
If you got another book, whenever it comes up, let us know. I think there are people in my audience that would find that really interesting. So.
Yeah, no, I actually have a horror anthology in May I plan on launching. I'll give you one last sneak peek, and then I'll run off and let you all talk about Kingdom Come. I haven't read it in forever either. All I can remember is I didn't like how they dealt with Wonder Woman, but I'm a big one fan. So. There we go. It won't let me do it. Oh, hang on. I have to share my whole screen. Yeah, this is one I have. Oh, there you go. Can you see it? We're probably going to change. I'll try it one more time, and if not, I'll send it to you sometime.
Okay.
Don't want to hold you guys up anymore. Try one more time to share it, and then I will leave. Never to be heard from again. There we go. Probably going to change the title. We've been talking about that, but yeah, it's a horror anthology, but I deal with some pretty nasty stuff.
That's quite a title, man.
What's funny is actually it's from there used to be a undead lounge band in Dallas called the Necrotones, and their lead singer was Necrophilia, and that's her there actually. And I got permission for her to be the the kind of the Elvira of the book.
Okay, yeah, the horror host. I love that. I love that bit.
Yeah. And so I got an actual already established character, if you will. They were kind of a pretty fun act. Like she always wore a choker because that's where her lover slashed her throat. And they would do songs like "Suicide is painless" and stuff like that. So, but it's a lot of harder stuff than I get to do in Little Death. So I'll hope to get to talk to you guys about it. But I've eaten up enough of your time. And again, thank you all for having me on. And I'll talk to you all again.
Yeah, have a good one, man. Thank you.
You too. Good night.
Yes, bye. Okay, so I didn't read Kingdom Come this week. I read Dark Knight Returns instead.
Well, that's a better book.
It is.
Hands down. So you are forgiven.
I tell you what, man, I have not read that book in probably 20 years, right? I just haven't taken the time to reread it. And so here's the thing. I got to back up a little bit, right? Because you guys both know this, that my comic journey like took a weird turn in 2015 when my buddy Chris reread the Killing Joke and decided it was misogynistic, and I reread it and decided that Alan Moore is kind of a hack, and it made me rethink all of the big books. Not entirely. I mean, he's got his strengths, but
to be frank, I think it might be a little column A, a little column B.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Killing Joke is not the masterpiece everyone says it is, and it's not misogynistic. It's misanthropic. But the worst of it is there's only one character in it, and that's the Joker, and everyone else is they don't have their own voice.
Cardboard cutout.
They are. They're all.
I hate taking the feminist interpretation, but I actually think that in Killing Joke, I think you can make it, because like Alan Moore is kind of creepy towards women in many works, enough so to make a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So
the thing is, in Killing Joke, there's as much creepiness toward Barbara as there is toward Jim, right? Like Jim Gordon arguably gets the worst of it if you really think about long-term trauma, because there's one traumatic event versus days of torture. So it's not pleasant for anyone. But even with that, they're just victims. They don't really have any agency. Batman himself is just a machine. He doesn't really have any agency. It's just a horrible book. I mean, like, psychologically, it's just a mess. And so it made me go back.
I think the only thing that I kind of liked is, and this is kind of goes, I think, for a lot of more anyway. And it reminds me of Michael Moorcock, who was the originator of the Elric stories. And someone said of him, I loved this, and it was a bad writer with good ideas. And I really liked that phrasing of it, because there are some, especially some of the British invasion, who they have some interesting ideas, but I just hate how they implement them. And so the crux of the Killing Joke that I think Alan Moore said, which was that everyone's the Joker, you're just separated by one bad day, or something like that. And he was like, well, that's an interesting concept, but I think it kind of goes back to, but the end product is just a mess, and it's a dirty, icky mess that makes you just feel icky when you're done reading it. And so, I mean, just leafing through it, just seeing those images. I've posted some of the images of the Jim Gordon stuff, and it's like, here we take this classic character and we just put him through just the most disgusting, just nonsense imaginable. And it's the main seed of that book is kind of like, oh, that's an interesting idea, but again, just the implementation, just ugh.
Sorry, I agree, because I was about to say that my thing for Moore is he's good at world building, which you go back to having good ideas. I just don't think he has a handle over what a narrative is. That's my main thing. I don't think he is a good narrative writer.
Now that's interesting. So I am slated. That's an interesting take. I am slated and committed to finishing a reread of Watchmen. And so I'm going to have to think about that as I go through that here.
Oh, if you actually try to look at Watchmen from like a narrative perspective from a writer, the thing's a mess. I like the book. It's great, but it is a mess.
So what about then for the man who
he does a lot with I was going to say, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you to it. Let's
sure,
one of the things about it is Watchmen does a fair bit with dealing with nonlinear storytelling. Yeah. And
it's a hard way to tell a story.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to tell a story. I don't think nonlinear storytelling hurts the ability to maintain the narrative structure of it. But
Frankenstein is a good example of a nonlinear story that maintains a great narrative structure.
And like I just recently read Persepolis, right? For the first time. And
oh, really?
Persepolis the thing about that is it doesn't really have an overall narrative. It's just a person's life.
It's memoir, yeah.
Yeah, it's a memoir. And I think it does memoir very well. But it's also it's not told sequentially. Which part did you read? Persepolis
1 or 2?
Just the first one. Just the first one.
Okay, I was gonna say, because it's not part 2 is not nearly as good as part 1.
Isn't it weird that like a lot of graphic memoirs are like that? Like Mouse is exactly the same situation. Like the first one is amazing, and the second one is half good. But yeah, it's like I think sometimes it maybe you get a lot because they're so personal. Maybe these creators get too wrapped up into it, you know. So they lose their artistic distance or whatever, the separation from the material, you know.
In the case of Persepolis, I put it down to the fact that Persepolis 1 tells a much more dramatic story, even though it's memoir, because she leaves. It's about her leaving Iran.
Mm-hmm.
But part 2 is about her basically discovering Marxism, essentially.
Well, there's a lot of discovering Marxism in the first one too, but like the funny thing is like.
But the second one is just beyond the pale, and it's just it doesn't have any of the narrative force of the first. It doesn't have any of the pathos of the first. When she comes back home, it's just she's seeing everything through just basically Marxist, feminist, modern SJW lens stuff, and it's just
anyway. Yeah, and I've seen the film, so I know like the part of that, like that's because the film's taken from both. So like, I think there are some other factors that played into all of that.
Well, the Persepolis 1 is the story, and I think this is the reason why it works better. Persepolis 1 is the story not just of her. It's a story of her, and it's the story of Iran before the revolution. And so because it is those two stories, it's got a much stronger narrative arc. When it's just her just meandering about Europe and being like, oh, here's how I discovered sex. It's like it's every other memoir ever created. There's nothing unique about it.
It's like, oh, that's great. But maybe that's why you think Marxism continues to be a good idea.
But the first part, when it's like it's the story of a nation, and when I first read some of it, it was a story of a nation I'd never really known the history of before. I just knew Ayatollah Khomeini, and so to hear the story of Iran told through a native, and to hear like their hopes and their dreams with just that whole arc, it was fascinating stuff.
Well, so here's one of the interesting things that formed kind of my perspective on reading part 1 as well. A number of years ago, my wife's uncle remarried because my wife's aunt had passed away, and so her uncle remarried a few years after that. And we sat across the table from an Iranian couple who he had been in America during the revolution in school. And cool. So like he got a job and got his green card and stayed because it was just a horror show back home. And then when things calmed down and everything, and he's like, I'm gonna go find someone to marry. And so back
I think I've heard you tell this before several times.
I think I have, like friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. They end up meeting this girl and communicating and bringing her, to America, right? He flew in, got hitched, and flew out. I got to talk to him about the revolution and their perspective on some of that stuff. And so like stuff that I was vaguely aware of. But then all of a sudden I had this personal connection from meeting with this guy. It's not my connection. It's a secondhand connection. So when I'm reading this stuff in Persepolis, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what the dude said. So it was very cool to kind of bring that back around, I think. So
cool.
Yeah, very cool. Anyway,
so we were talking about Alan Moore.
And we're talking about the idea of setting up a narrative, and where the lack of sequentiality doesn't necessarily hinder that. I'm thinking about what you're saying there, Metal, and I'm very interested to see how that plays on my subconscious when I'm reading Watchmen this week. So that's gonna be fun.
Look at it with a pretty critical eye.
When
you're rereading.
Well, and I intend to, because once I said after reading The Killing Joke again, 5 years ago, it like started me questioning everything I had thought my 20-year-old self thought about comics, right? And I'm like, wait, maybe that guy was a moron.
I wouldn't go that far. I definitely think Alan Moore is overrated.
Yeah.
But,
No, I meant the 20-year-old me who like looked at all of these things and was just like, this is the most amazing comic I've ever read, and this. So I went back, and one of the things I bring that up is to say I hadn't read Dark Knight Returns in 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since all of that happened, went down, I just hadn't taken the time to read it through again. And so I'm reading through it this week, and I was super pleased. I was a little surprised, but I was super pleased to see how well it stood up, right? When things like Kingdom Come, just like it was like dashed like the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, just completely broken. It's a trash fire. But I haven't read it in a year. And one of the things Twitless and I were talking about, I gotta say this. I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit, Twitless. Yes, we were chatting after the show last week, and he says you should reread it, thinking about it as a meta narrative about story, not just the story itself, but about story. And I said, that's an interesting thought experiment, but I haven't gotten to it yet. So, and I'm not prepared to discuss it on those terms because as a story, just taken at face level, it's terrible. Terrible may not be bad, but it is totally built. It is subpar because the entirety of Kingdom Come is built upon the.
Well, I thought you said we weren't going to talk about this.
The story itself is built upon the failure of the heroes. Like they this is great. Captain in the chat says even Alan Moore believes the Killing Joke is hot garbage. True. But yeah, it's built upon the failure of everyone, that everybody is just stupid. I mean, that's the whole crop of current heroes. Everybody is there. They're all incompetent buffoons. So I
don't quite see it that way.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't.
Well, no, like I said before,
one of my biggest problems in like superhero fiction in the last few years, and especially in the movies, right, is the idea of the stupid hero. I hate it. Yeah, the Dark Knight requires a stupid hero. The Dark Knight Rises requires a stupid hero. Man of Steel requires a stupid hero. Batman v Superman requires a stupid hero. Justice League is just stupid. There's so the whole MCU depends upon everybody being like weak-willed, callow, or stupid for any of the conflict to be an issue. I just can't stand that trope, and and nobody but me notices it, and that's the thing that bothers me so much. Like,
I don't know. It depends on the movie, because you're brought up like several properties, and a few of which I actually would agree that there's some stupidity going on there. But in some of them, I think it's willful naivete. Like sometimes it's like their values, where they're choosing to be either credulous or it's not always just like stupid.
It's pretty stupid though.
I thought we were talking about
at least in some cases it's ignorance.
Yeah,
well,
it
some of the later ones it clearly is stupidity.
Well, my point is that willful stupidity and ignorance are bedfellows, man.
You can't blame someone for being ignorant, especially when they're new to something. But you can really blame somebody who's been a veteran at something for being willfully stupid.
Yes. Anyway,
but yeah. So back to not talking about Kingdom Come.
Back to not talking about Kingdom Come. This is fun. I'm waiting.
I was going to give more another compliment that might be a little backhanded, but I do actually think it's really a compliment. Okay. And I think from a writer's perspective, he is a very brave person, very courageous, because he's always making new mistakes. Right? He'll like suddenly finally get good at something, but then before he instead of continuing with the thing he's gotten good at, he'll be like, okay, I'm going to try this different thing that I haven't tried before and probably do it awfully, but I'm going to go and do it anyway.
So one thing is like, because I'm thinking back not just to like some of his graphic novels, but to some of his actual like superhero stories. Because he wrote Reese and I were talking last week about Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which is seen as a seminal superhero or Superman story, and then there's For the Man Who Is Everything. So he. And then there's the work that I have yet to read, like on Swamp Thing and stuff. So I know he can do narrative. I kind of like you were mentioning before, he is very experimental though. And by choice, and sometimes his choice of experiment is just insane, like, with Lost Girls or whatever. I think the thing that is his strength and weakness is the fact, again, he always comes in with okay, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to do a really crazy idea that someone wouldn't necessarily think of. And then people go, oh, that's fantastic writing. And just having an original idea doesn't make you a fantastic writer. It just means you have really original ideas. I think Alan Moore can do both, because when he's playing with like traditional ideas, like, again, he's made some stories that are just like, part of the accepted canon. But I think this is why he's overrated, because it's like with like in Watchmen, it's in things of that nature, he's got a little mixture of some good writing, some new and original ideas, but people kind of like, because it's kind of a new idea, people see it as better writing than I think maybe it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, I think, how I see it.
Well, I think that's fair. Yeah. For years, Alan Moore's been the kind of guy where I've really felt that the more control editors have over the end product, the better his material is. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is because I think editorial control, I think constraints force the creator to tell the story they want to more creatively, more with more interest to it. And I think that's like, you see somebody who, like, for example, the first League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is just better than the second, right? It is, because it was a new idea. He was trying to pitch it out there. He got sidelined into a deal with DC when he didn't want one, right? That was because he signed it up with Image, and then Image sold like those properties with Wildstorm, and they sold those properties to DC like in the middle of production, and so suddenly he's working for DC again. Just guys. I think it's hilarious. Anyway,
I'm going to be fair to him too. When I say that he doesn't really have a grasp of narrative, I'm taking that as like the average over his whole career. Because I want to look at linear time and people grow. Taking Swamp Thing as an example. Swamp Thing actually does have a pretty fair and consistent grasp of how to write a narrative that flows and can be followed and has good structure to it. He does experiment in some other ways that he's not so strong with, because he does finally understand how a narrative works, but it's there, in the linear time, people's career, they change throughout it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think it was, again, I mean, the more superstar he got, the less constraints that were put upon him, and then you don't have to feel like you have to fit into, the boxes. But some of the boxes are there for a reason, because they actually make sense, you could play with the sand and all the toys in the sandbox. Don't start bringing dirt from the anthill outside of the sandbox. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my take on it. But yeah, so but I said, so back to the thing I was saying is, like, I read through Dark Knight Returns and I was super pleased at how well it held up. I think it's so good. And I think the thing that is great about it, and I'm actually getting ready to, I don't know when I'll get to it, but I want to do a blog review for our website, because I started writing some notes down. But one of the things that I think is great about it is that the vision of Batman that that is in that book, right, was authentically Batman, was thoroughly, accurately Batman, and really kind of cemented the shape in which Batman was written until, like, Denny left the title, right? So he was somebody who was, confident. And that he was, I read a quote from the introduction of, like, the 12th edition or whatever it is that I've got. that I thought summed it up just perfectly. But just this idea that there's no maudlin, no self-pity, no moroseness in Batman, and even his sorrow is something Olympian.
Just larger than life.
Larger than life. Yeah. It was that he's not, it's not about feeling sorry for yourself. The Batman doesn't feel sorry for himself. Batman just broods. And that jagged stoicism. And I just thought that was a really great point, and something that is that for like 20 years was cemented into Batman's personality. And I thought that was just a great thing. And it's, I don't know, it's we now we have, the slights upon, I just don't know. Batman hasn't been the same in the last 15 years as that,
Yeah.
It's like the Batman they're writing in the books today could never, be the Batman that, sucker punched Superman, But which is, I guess, one of the things I found so disturbing or distressing in retrospect about the Batman v Superman movie is that like that whole Batman Superman fight had none of the stakes and none of the gravity that Miller's did in Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. Because like, even talking about like the warehouse scene or whatever, it's almost like two kids playing in a sandbox where they don't have to worry about anything being broken around them. Like, yeah, there's this abandoned building that might break on top of them, but it's like everybody in the city's fine. They're both probably going to be fine. It's what's really going on here?
Mm-hmm. Well, and not just the gravity to the circumstances, but also like, I mean, like in Dark Knight Returns, like Miller spent the third issue while progressing the overall story of Batman's return and the Joker's escape at the same time, right? He's telling the story of the conflict of these worldviews between these guys, right?
Yeah.
And you've got Superman, who's like this utter Boy Scout who's just going along to get along with this weird government corruption, this federal overreach stuff. And you've got Bruce Wayne, the boy from downtown, the localized power source, the guy who's not submitting to central control, right? And they have this conflict of concepts of justice, of maintaining the peace, about what all this is. It's just this philosophical weight, and what's
very strong themes,
right? And what's pushing it behind that too is like 30 years of relationship between these guys, right? Where they've got like 30 or 40 years where they were 25 of those years where they were like buddies, or at least
in the movie there's nothing behind it other than like, well, this guy is super powerful and could be a threat to humanity. I think I should fight him.
Yeah.
That's kind of like it.
And at the same time, like, Batman's saying, "Oh, that guy's a threat to society," while he's like blowing up docks and dragging incendiary bombs around.
So I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot to say to defend Batman v Superman.
I don't think many people do.
But I do have one bit, and it's pretty much the bit that a lot of people have recognized, which is the fact that, not from a narrative standpoint, but from a visual standpoint, Zack Snyder is perfect to direct Batman in a visual sense. The warehouse fight, the way that is choreographed, the way that plays out, it's one of the most Batmanist, kind of fight scenes, and it's way better than pretty much anything we've like ever gotten in cinema. And it's a very delightful action sequence, and it shows that to me, it's I would much rather watch a Zack Snyder just do a Batman film, and maybe have someone else kind of like, give oversight on the script. But
so here's the ticket. Here's what you got to realize: Zack Snyder is a very good cinematographer.
I was going to say the same thing.
Never should have been allowed to get the director's chair, ever. I have never enjoyed a Zack Snyder movie. They're visually interesting, but he doesn't have the chops to tell narrative on film. It's not good. It looks pretty. It doesn't tell compelling stories. They just don't. They spend a lot of money because people are sheep. But if you really get down to the artistry of the story, it doesn't tell compelling stories. They're just hodgepodges of pretty scenes.
Well, this is my my problem with just a lot of like cinema or film today, is that we've replaced a lot of like the directorial role with people who are just cinematographers because of how big like action events have become and choreography. It's like, well, you guys are great at doing this. I'm still kind of wishing that the story was fleshed out more.
Yep. And they
like,
don't have
JJ is an okay cinematographer. I wouldn't even call him a great one, but he's an okay cinematographer. He's not an okay director.
What he gets right, he gets really right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's usually like 2/3 of a picture.
So back to Alan Moore, or Dark Knight Returns, or
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I don't. So like I said, having just reread Dark Knight Returns, man, the complex themes, the emotional traction behind everything, the way like Varley's colors really like just reinforce the moods.
It's really good.
Oh my God, it's so good. And it holds up, right? And so, like I said, I went to read it and I thought it would be, I didn't think it would be as good as I remembered it being, because I just have this pessimism about things now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the thing and I was like, oh man, I don't know. It's still gonna be, it'll be fun. It's Dark Knight Returns, and also like how much is the stuff they like I said, the Batman v Superman, I think sullies Dark Knight Returns, because Dark Knight Returns is so good with all of the complexities of it.
Uh-huh.
And BVS just rips those concepts out and parades the skin of them around.
They have some of the visuals.
Yeah.
That's basically what they. Yeah. No, but Frank Miller's really good.
Yeah.
He's a very good comic storyteller, because he's really good at the writing and he's really good at the art. He can do it all. And because he can do it all, he's able to make works of art. Ronin, which is basically what was Tarkovsky or whatever, like ripped off for Samurai Jack. I
haven't read Ronin yet. It's been on my deep list, but I just haven't ever seen it, and I've had cash.
It's a little weird in some places, but it's still Frank Miller knows how to tell a very compelling sequential narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and because he does it all, he doesn't have to worry about synergizing with anybody either. That's the strongest part, right? Like usually you have synergy with yourself. You know what you're putting down. You don't have to like explain something to somebody like, well, this is what I'm going for here.
Well, and that's the one thing with DKR too, is like, his inker, Klaus Johnson, he worked on Daredevil for years. And when Miller left, Johnson took over, right? So they already had like the same kind of energy. And then of course the colorist, Varley, they got married, didn't they?
That I'm not. Yeah, I don't know that.
I don't know that.
I think Miller and Varley got. I think I got to look it up here. Lynn Varley. Speaking of synergy. Did my keyboard stop working? Okay. That's probably part of what was happening. Looks like my keyboard got shut off.
Yeah, but I think it's synergy is a very important thing. Like, anybody could tell just like a popcorn comic at any time with any group of people, and as long as you're putting the effort in, you can make like a pretty fun thing that people will enjoy. But if you're really trying to tell like an epic, I think you really need to be in a crew that understands each other.
Yeah. Okay.
Or have one person that can do everything.
or most of it, yeah. Because like even with like Frank Miller, you still have like sometimes people doing either inks or colors or such. But he's got much more control over what's going on the page.
Okay, so gossip column stuff. They married in '86, divorced in '05.
Okay.
So there you have it. So that there you have it. Thank you, Wikipedia. Right. So, but yeah. So here's a question for you. Actually, speaking of this, the only one of us who does it all is the metal. He does his own art.
I'm the only one that works.
Yeah. Not the only one that works. You're the only one that does it all. I think everybody.
No, I'm on my stuff. I got cut off. Yeah, I'm the only one that works on my stuff. At the moment, anyway. But yeah.
Yeah. So, has that been a situation? I mean, obviously, I feel the struggle, right? As just the writer, and the letterer, and sometimes the colorist. But I'm just the writer. So that's one thing. It keeps me from getting all of the things that I'd like to get done because I just can't. I just don't have the chops to tell the stories. So that's a struggle. But Twitless, you've had the good fortune with your two big things of finding just great partners that seem fairly dependable too.
Yeah. It was it's been it's a lot of work, and you actually spend a chunk of money just trying to find good people. Because I've oh gosh, I know it sounds like a small change, but like I was spending over, is it $100, $200? Let me think, to find good artists by just testing them on small that's one of the reasons why a lot of some of the Omega Girl stories are really short, because I was using these short form storytelling pieces to help find reliable collaborators. Because you don't want to test drive somebody on like a 20-page book, because you don't want to find out partway through, oh, this person is going to stop halfway through. I'm going to have like half an issue, and just have half the artwork.
Yeah, that's and then even then you can have somebody who's been doing hundreds of pages, and you think you got a really solid connection with them, and then man, life just gets in the way, and they leave and go away.
That's the sad thing, is that you're always on like wouldn't say a knife's edge, but you're always one catastrophe away from this isn't gonna happen.
Well, I was kids on me and moved to Omaha.
What'd you say?
I said, are they gonna have kids on me and move to Omaha? Am I gonna be out of a partner?
Is that what happened?
No.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I actually had a situation. I was talking to Doug Garrett earlier, and he's working on the second Lone Wolf, and he's on like I think the third artist he was working on it with, maybe second, but it was a struggle. But I guess the guy he's working on with right now, they've got a real good energy, and the book's approaching the finish line and all kinds of stuff. So I'm glad to hear that, because I want to read it. That's the ticket. I'm excited to read it. So.
Well, Reese, have you checked out the Facebook group? What's it called? Let me find it. There's a specific Facebook group that's devoted to matching writers and artists. I think it's called Connecting Artists and Writers. I think it's called.
Yeah, I think so. And I've been on a couple of those, but one of the things, the worst part of something like that, and here's the situation that I'm at, right? The worst thing is I've got I don't have a lot of money. So that's a struggle that I've got too, is that it's just like I look at like you get there's certain teams that just like they just mesh really well. They've got their flow going, and they're just putting stuff out, and it's like, man, that's great. That's great. They've just found that perfect synergistic relationship, and I'm just waiting. So I've got to save up, kind of a thing. I'll tell you, I mean, I've talked about it before on the show. I've got that Chad Little the Tinker story that I've got in the can. Carl Pencilman is the perfect artist for it, but all I've been able to afford is a page. So that's where we're at with that right now. So that's that's what that is right now. So I've got some other stuff, hopefully that'll wrap up that we can use as some seed money stuff. But that's where we're at. So
the thing I liked about that particular Facebook group is how it had a lot of variety.
Mm.
And so like there were people who were offering their services for much more expensive than I could afford. But then there was definitely because there were so many people and so many people looking for work. It was now it took me a while. I was scrolling through page upon page. That was the other side of finding good help and good people to collaborate with, was just the fact that I was scrolling through just hours. I spent days, if not weeks, scrolling through portfolios. And then, after I found someone I wanted, and then I would like say, hey, what's your availability? And then it's like not available. And it's like, crap. So that's why I like that Facebook group was really the most reliable source I found, because I was trolling DeviantArt and I was using Reddit. There was a couple groups on there. And DeviantArt was actually a really big disappointment. I did not find a single lead that went anywhere on DeviantArt.
I dealt with that back in the day.
The one person I found who was like really good and was available, I think, I said, hey, what's your page rate for like a comic book? And he ended up saying something like $3,000 per page, which just told me he didn't want to work in comics or didn't have any experience really working in comics, because like not even Ethan Van Sciver at his prime was making $3,000 a page. No. So those aren't real page rates. That's just like he had broken it down to like hourly, which is not how page rates work. Page rates are just what you get per page. It's usually a flat rate, and it takes into account an hourly kind of workflow. But he was basically just charging, I think he said he was going to charge $90 an hour, and it was going to take this many hours to make a single comic book page. And it ended up like calculating out to $3,000. And I was like, so a single comic book issue would be something like, was it 30, 60? I'm trying to remember how much it was going to cost. $3,000, 20 pages. Yeah, it was like $60,000. And I was like, that's not how comics work.
Yeah, like most comics aren't even going to make that in a store. Like if you ship it out from a major publication, let alone an independent thing.
Right. Yeah. So again, like it told me that like, because like that's another thing that contractors will do, is if they don't want a job, they just overcharge through the nose for it. So it just told me he did not want to work in comics, which is fine. Like it's totally fine for him not want to do that. But it was just a funny experience. So yeah, DeviantArt was garbage. I found a couple of leads on Reddit, but they just didn't pan out really well. But the Facebook group, I found really good leads. So if anyone's looking for collaborations, like I said, there's this Facebook group called, I think, Connecting Artists and Writers, and it's, I found really good people there. And it's really cool because, like I said before, for people who are at different tiers or levels of availability for funds and such, like there are people who are like, hey, I am willing to work for free, or I am willing to work for a cut of the eventual profits. And so, like I said, it was really neat because it was, the most fruitful of all the things like I said, spent weeks looking for stuff. Made my eyeballs bleed looking through the portfolio. The amount of portfolios I looked through.
Yeah, I need to check something like that out, because I have way more stories ready to go than I have time to draw. Mm-hmm. It's hard to get myself to even draw the story I'm supposed to be drawing, because I just have so much stuff I want to work on. It's like, yeah. And I've tried, I know one of like the biggest Reddit ones, and I've been in that one for a while, is Comic Book Collabs, but that's such a
That's the one I looked at too. Yeah. That's the one I was a part of, or not part of, but I found a couple leads through there. And one of them, like, it was just like, some of them just ghost you. There was, I was in contact with an artist from Italy, and she had really nice looking art. And I said, "Hey, I want to pay you for this." And she was like, "Great!" And I never heard back from her. it was so weird. And it was like, "No, seriously, I want to pay you." And nope. And then I had another artist, and he did pretty good work. In fact, he did an Omega Girl story. It's going to show up in my second issue. But the communication barrier came to bite with a vengeance. And so there were just moments where I think we were just talking past each other. And so the book the story he did looks good, but there were certain things that I would have liked different. And just the communication barrier was just too much to overcome.
Yeah.
And that taught me the lesson of just the artist I'm working with now, Brian. He's good old US of A, and it's really great to not have any doubts or fears that when I'm asking for something artistically, that like he doesn't understand it. Like, when he says yes, I understand, I know that like, oh yeah, he really does.
I had a really good experience. I don't know if you guys remember the Corona Kings project that was put out about a year ago, just as a free webzine, and it was just a bunch of indie comics guys. We knew each other on Twitter, put together just some free comic stuff out there. Doug Garrett kind of organized it through his website, which is cool. But they were going to do a second volume, and I had the great opportunity to work with Carlos Rodriguez, the guy who did the art for Otis Stein that just shipped a little bit ago. And I did a superhero story with him, and we just were doing it just to give away. It was just like a little 8-page story that was. I'm gonna see if I can't find the thing to share it here, because it's a fun one. I really enjoyed it. And I went through. He was just originally just black and white, and I went through and colored it. Let's see here. I just used flat colors because he's got such an awesome, strong, bold line style that I wanted to really be able to highlight that. Here we go. And that was a lot of fun to work with. I would love to do something else with Carlos.
Yeah, I remember seeing you coloring this thing on a couple of the comic jams.
Yeah. This was a fun one.
Where's Carlos from?
He's from Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah. His English is really good. There were a few idioms and stuff that he didn't understand as you're talking stuff over. But the way he really liked to work with it was actually he got the script, and they also wanted like just a sketch of kind of what I had in mind. And so I drew the thing out, just stick people basically, and then sent him a ton of photo references of the Washington D.C. subway system, the metro, because that's where this is set. And I've been to DC several times, and so it was really important to feel like a DC subway. So I shot it at him, and man, I just loved how it came out.
Yeah, it reminds me of I worked with an artist from Brazil, so just definitely kind of a Latin style in a sense going on there.
Yeah. See, I was talking over with somebody the other day, and how did I describe it? If you were to draw a middle line between Kelly Jones and Mike Mignola, I think Carlos would be somewhere along that line. But yeah, I just really dug it. I thought it turned out super well. But so,
oh, neat.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, I'd love to work with him some more. I've got a great story in mind, but I don't have the time to write it yet. So, the stupid day job.
Yeah. I've met a couple people through that one Reddit too, though. It's not the worst place. I think your Facebook might be better, the one that you're talking about, the group, but it's not the worst place. I've been working with this one person. We're almost done on a short. It's only it was 5 pages. I think she extended it to 6 just because she felt better splitting the last page in half. I'm like, I don't care. I mean, it's an extra page you have to do. If you feel more comfortable, that doesn't bother me. I was trying to keep it short. And I want to say we're almost done because we're on the last page. But then again, we've been working on this since summer of 2019. So, somewhere.
And
It looks really good, though.
Is that part of the X Dynamos, or is that for one of the other comics?
Well, it's a side story. One of the other things in the continuity, because X Dynamos Chaos is the branching continuity, and also the name of the main webcomic. But it's another story. It follows a guy, the superhero kind of based off of professional wrestling. His name is he goes by like a gladiator named Maximus, but he kind of looks like a Macho Man type character. And I gave the story like a really cheesy, like this could only have existed in the 90s type name, and it's like Awesome Max, where like the word continues into the name Max.
That's amazing.
And it's pretty cool. He's homeless. And he just has really bad luck. He went into the military. Then he got drafted into what he thought was a completely legal kind of like super soldier type experiment thing. Then it turned out, no, it wasn't. And as far as he knew, he was the only person that survived it anyway. So now he's like dishonorably discharged for being in this illegal program, just like wandering around New York homeless. And he's like, oh, whatever. I've always wanted to be a good person. That's why I went into the military in the first place. So he starts becoming a vigilante. But then when he gets arrested, he's like, he doesn't want to fight the cops, so he turns himself in. And then it turns out that there's this this League of Triumph, which is like almost a professional wrestling association, but he doesn't know it's all rigged yet. And Brandon is like, you can legally be a hero if you work with us. And he starts doing his thing for a while, and he's fighting the bad guys and stuff. And they even Brandon, like, we have drones that follow people around because it raises the morale of the citizenry if they can see the heroes doing their work. Then he finds out that they're the ones that are sending the bad guys out, and it's all just like a bunch of like kayfabe and everything, and that they're actually like extorting society through their whole system. So he goes back to being homeless, dropping off his entire like budget that they've been giving him, and has made it like his life work to take this organization down. So he's living in an abandoned warehouse that's like so old it's a historical landmark, so they can't tear it down, with this like 12-year-old street urchin that he met. And it's just a bunch of like wacky stuff as he fights like other really over-the-top themed villains and stuff that are, things that you would mix between comics and wrestling.
For some reason, I keep getting the Maniac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia vibes.
And he's a character that has his power is like a hype factor. So the more you hype him up, the stronger he gets. But the problem is, like, at a certain point too, like I will make it heavy when I get to telling a story. He starts to deal with like depression and stuff, which negatively impacts his hype factor, and there's all kinds of stuff I have planned for his personal story arc.
Very fun.
And this is just going to be like a little 5-page story.
Yeah.
Now,
that's cool, man.
Okay, 5.
Oh, that's 6 now.
You've broken the holy number. I sure hope you don't plan on going to print.
Well, if I do, being the fact that it's a short, it's probably just going to be shoved in with something else anyway.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you're now. Look, you've printed collections for X Dynamos. Is it are those in like floppy sizes, or are they trades?
No, I only have individual floppies right now. I have been thinking of putting together the first 4 chapters, which I consider volume 1 of Act 1, into a single thing for people to buy. I just haven't assembled it because I have to like edit title pages and everything for that. it'll be like 100 pages for volume 1, so it's a decent chunk. But yeah, people can get the all first 5 chapters in individual floppies.
Cool.
So, I just was curious because it's like that's one thing. If you go a square bound, then it doesn't really, you don't have to keep it to 8 at that point.
Yeah, it's like anything that's like I think 60 or higher, you can do square bound.
Yeah. I'm obviously thinking just about floppies and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really thinking we're kind of making a plan to at least look at a trial doing once you do some reformatting and coloring on Forces, of taking the first year and making a manga sized edition, because you can print them up. What is it? I forget the name of it right now. One of the print houses that'll do like manga sized books. They're a minimum order of 2.
Kablam is like that.
Kablam, that's what I'm thinking of.
That's what I use for most of my stuff, because if you go through Kablam, you can also go to Indie Planet and set up print on demand.
That's what I'm doing. Yep. I like Kablam, yeah.
And so looking at doing taking the new colored edition of Forces, which I don't know if you guys have been checking out. I've been pretty pleased with how that's coming along. Very, very pleased. In fact, let me just show off just one little thing here. I believe it is in this folder right here. That is, here we go. And screen share. And here you see the original. Let's do this one here. And then here's with the colors added. And I've added the backgrounds and an extra character in there that makes this joke funnier, and all kinds of stuff. I've been pretty pleased with how that's coming along for an ancient webcomic made by 2 art writers instead of artists.
Yeah.
So I think that the adding color to them adds a lot.
Now with color.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, man. And and then we have extra things in there. So yeah, I've been pretty pleased with that. This week's update is not ready yet, so I'm working on that when I'm done here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the opposite direction. Eventually, have a trade paperback that's like without color.
I'm actually, one of the things we're looking at. I think I want to get when the pages when the pages are all ready to go. I'm considering because the cost is so much lower for gray, for like black and white. And I've looked at a lot of these pages in grayscale, and they still, with the additional backgrounds and shading and stuff, still hold up pretty well. So I think that's actually going to be our plan, is to take it and look at it as grayscale and just see how that works.
Yeah. See, mine has nothing to do with cost. My brother is just always yelling at me. He's like, "I like your art so much better when it's black and white. Why do you ruin it with the color?"
Yeah, you've talked about that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, this version is just for you. Or anybody else who wants it, but mostly just for you.
Yeah, whoever pays can have it. That's how it works.
It is a tricky thing, yeah. The coloring is always a trade-off when it comes to comic art.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it works really, really well, and it's just a thing, and sometimes it's like not even necessary,
Like with like Odie's art from Xenotype.
Mm-hmm.
I think his lines, just how much effort he puts into it, it just tends to look better in black and white, I think, than color.
Well, that was like, I don't know if you guys are familiar or paid attention to Dan Sakurau's stuff on Adobe Kroger, right? He had Leandro specifically doing black and white because that's the style he thinks matches Leandro's style better. So I mean, it's really neat to accent it. And that was like when I went through and colored that story of Carlos's. I was showing him some of the stuff, and he's just like, it's really flat colored. He said, "You want? I mean, we could. I mean, if you wanted, I could take and color it and do something different with it." And I said, I intentionally wanted it flat colored because your line work is so expressive, and I don't want to take anything away from that. You know? I think the last thing I want to do is do anything that's going to detract from the starkness of your colors, of your lines, because I think that's the money. You know. So I said, I intentionally am keeping it flat, and he's like, this is. I mean, I don't have a lot of skill with it, but this was also an artistic choice. And he said, I can see what you mean. So I think that's one thing I was talking to Jeff Lashley. You guys know Jeff on Twitter?
I don't think so.
He was the artist for the first Lone Wolf, Doug Garrett's first issue of Lone Wolf, and he does barrels over at Wicked. I don't know if you remember that title or not, but he's done some other stuff too. But about like a lot of modern colors are so saturated and they're so digitized that I think a lot of art loses its poignancy because the coloring doesn't really match the inking style, and that's just something that I think is there's something to be said for old school flat colors. I think with the right kind of line art.
I will say that when it came to coloring, it was definitely something that took time and effort to figure out, because I didn't know what I wanted. Basically, I thought I knew what I wanted. When I asked for it and was even given it, it didn't look the way it should. And so what I lucked out. My colorist just basically kind of did his own, what he felt was best, and didn't, on a piece. And I didn't ask for anything in particular, and he just kind of used his own expertise to make the art sing. And I went, oh, that's what I want, actually. So it was a very interesting experience.
Yeah, I just got the second issue about a month ago, and I haven't read it yet. So back to barrels. Neo's in the chat. So I know that didn't sound like it made any sense at all there, Twit. Sorry, man.
No, you're fine.
But yeah. Well, guys, it's 9 here, and I'm tired, and I've got like a stack of things to do tonight. So I'm going to say let's cut it short-ish.
You mean actually go on time?
Yes, that is what I mean. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Spread the word. Next week, I'm excited about this. Next week, Doug Ernst is coming on. We're talking about Soulfinder's Black Tide, and Captain Cummings will be here to do a live review at the time. So that's going to be a twofer on the thing. I'm excited for it.
That is quite the power hour.
I know. I am really 2 hours. I am really hoping that my copy of Black Tide gets here before then, so I have a chance to read it, because I ordered it and it got shipped out yesterday. So, so I'm hoping.
All right.
Oh man, cool. Here, check it out. Got to say this. I gotta give props. I gotta haul garbage in the rain. That's a tough night, man. Courage. He always, whenever he can tune in, he's always at work. So it's always, you never know what's going to happen there, but appreciate that. We will catch everybody later on. And yeah. Oh, hey, also, just so you guys know, I'm not sure when it's going to open, but Nick Mueller, who I did a little bit of work for, is going to be doing a very short Demon Hunter campaign on Indiegogo, launching I think next week. So if you're interested in reading something that I wrote that doesn't involve my goofy characters, you can check out his less goofy characters there on Indiegogo. So there you have it. So okay, I'm going to call it, and you guys all have a good night. Oh, I didn't let you guys show your stuff like normal. What am I thinking?
That's okay. My webcam's been doing it for me this entire time.
That's true. That's true. I still wanted to be polite, though. Yeah. So, anyway, one more chance.
Check me out on superschooled.com. Just starting a new storyline. Oh, thanks. Where we don't fix our very broken timeline.
I love that so much. That's amazing.
So if you want to see what happens when you don't fix a time travel story, you can take a look at what we've done, the mess we have made.
You guys got Galactus-sized cojones. That's amazing.
He's gonna be like a pig, and you're just gonna like revel in that mess.
Pretty much.
Just.
Well, it's just again the storyline has to do with dinosaurs, and we brought the dinosaurs back, but we decided to not reset the timeline, so dinosaurs now just walk amongst us.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I love it. Because if you had a chance to ruin the timeline but keep dinosaurs, like what choice would you make?
I would
that one.
That one. I want to have made that one, but I don't know that I'm strong enough. That's.
I don't even think I would think twice.
Yeah.
That was part of the thing. Is like I said, I was talking to it off camera last week about the whole deal we were talking over, and I was just like, dude, that we made the decision years ago that like just time travel doesn't happen, right? Like that was. Like, I love a good time travel story, but I hate bad ones, and I would rather not tell one than tell a bad one in the context of our universe, right? So I was just like, the editorial board, we just sat there, we just like said, no, we're not, this is one of our rules, no time travel. Maybe forward, never backward, no timelines, none of that stuff, alternate universes, none of that stuff. We just cut it off right there. And I'm just like, Phil told me about that thing. I was like, I think I made a huge mistake.
Yeah. Well, the mascot to my universe is literally just a tourist that travels through space and time to see all the most interesting events going on. So you can just see her like popping up anywhere in the background.
See, I have a character called the Umperer, and he's an interdimensional umpire. He makes like sports calls on timelines. So
that's great.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. Let's break this thing. Anyway, so check that out, and then I'm gonna have the Adventures of Omega Girl, my first superhero book, listed on Indie Planet soon. As soon as I catch a breather and double check some things.
Ooh, I will say one more personal thing before we go. It's sort of personal. Cody Fernandez, Jack Irons, getting ready to launch the 1 through 3 collection. I love that story, and getting people to pre-sign up to get told about it. If 125 people sign up ahead of time, added to the swag will be a digital copy of Joe Jobs, The Past Never Died. So I'm prepared to give away a chunk of those books. So digital versions, I can't afford to print them, but yeah. So if 125 people sign up on his pre-list, then that's we're doing there. So yeah. So tell your friends, Jack Irons. Okay, we're gonna call it a thingamy.
Oh, and, I'll have stuff soon, so cool. I guess people should pay attention to that.
Yeah. Dude, later, everybody.
See ya.